guys, this is Stephen Farr-Jones for the FarrOut Slot Car Club. Today we are going to be doing a little snippet for Electric Deems on our club, our classes, and our Formula One classes in particular. This is the SCX Formula One Club, also known as Scalextric Spain. We have been racing these since about 1996, even though they actually stopped production in the early 90s. They started production in the mid-70s, late 70s. So we're racing a club class here for Formula One, which is 30 years old. That's a problem. And over time, we're going to have to find a different class to potentially be replacing that Formula One class. What's nice about these cars is they're very standardized in terms of the motors, the tires, the guide blades, the gears, and everything else. So they give you a good platform to have a consistent, different types of cars, but very consistent racing. So the three cars I happen to pull out here happen to be a Ferrari, a Minardi, and a McLaren. But they all use exactly the same motors, they use the same tires on each one. When you take them apart, you know, it's a very standardized methodology of a inline setup. You know, we stabilize them with a little bit of hot glue to make sure there's less vibrations and things like that. But the problem is I can't even get motors for these anymore. So great class, we love running it. They can be customized. You know, this is my personal race car, a Jägermeister. Nearly all of mine are. But at the end of the day, we've got a problem. We don't know what we're going to do to replace these. There's a few candidates. We've tried a couple. There are new ones coming out this year. We happen to be talking around about the time of the Nuremberg Toy Fair of 2020. It's actually on this week, last couple of days and this weekend. And hopefully something comes out of that that can be our new class. Wow, people off. Oh, check this out. Electric Deems gave me a bag. What a surprise. It's a brown paper bag, so I'm expecting alcohol, because if it's not alcohol, I'm going to be very disappointed. Oh, okay. This is the NSR new Formula One class. They're calling it Formula One 1986 to 89, which just so happens to be the same time period as these cars generally come from. Looks like we've got the white test car here. 1/32 scale, which is great. All of these are in line. Nice little card from NSR. With a certificate that this model has been finished manually and the imperfections are not defects, but witness a handmade job. Nice little touch, given that they're all made in Italy. Everything, all the components. Sorry, I don't know the components are, but they're completely assembled and the bodies are made in Italy. That's rare nowadays. Most of the slot car companies out there are producing overseas, typically in China. Nice box, by the way. It's curved on the edges. I prefer that. I've hurt myself, honestly, many times on square edge boxes. On the back, it gives us the usual data. Most importantly for me, it tells me exactly what the part number is of the car. That way I can always get a replacement if I need one. Again, proudly, NSR, 100% made in Italy. So, NSR are a very high-end brand in the slot car business. They do a lot of race cars. What we have here is what they call their generic Formula One 86 to 89 car. What I would point out to you is how very, very close it is, but not exactly the same as the original F1 87 Formula One car from Ferrari. This is again the SCX model, the NSR model. What we see immediately is that we're very close in wheelbase, but not quite. We are a little bit narrow in the rear axle width. I'll talk about the length to the guide here in a second, but you can see they've fundamentally taken a slightly altered Ferrari body and done a job with that. Even the rear wing, there was a stepped up rear wing in this model in the past. You can see here, it looks like it's slightly better attached. It's got a double attachment system down to the bottom wing at least. So let's take this car and have a little look at it from the underside. Nice, easy unscrew. I don't need any mechanical tools to do that. That's nice. Get rid of that blue distraction. Okay, so what do we got here? We have a floating front axle. It's solid, which is nice again. Ooh, that's an interesting guide. Okay, so this is what they call their low friction guide from NSR. I don't know whether the plastic is made differently, but I do know that the guide blade is slightly thinner in the cross section than in a lot of the other slot cars that we race from other brands. Interestingly, the body is already loose on the chassis. I don't know whether that's by design from the factory or whether it's part of the design. We have an inline motor pod, nicely loose already, so we can isolate the vibrations of the wheels and drivetrain assembly from the rest of the body. What else do we have here? 4-point screws. Let me change that. Looks like it's a 5-point screw attachment, but I suspect when we take this apart, we're going to see the bottom and the top screw attaches the body, and these 3 screws here most likely are attaching the motor pod to the chassis itself. We've got very nicely printed tires with Goodyear Eagles on both sides, which happen to be correct for the Ferraris. There were other tires used in this time period. The mirrors, they look to be maybe of a flexible plastic, might be a little bit more impact resistant. We've got, looks like we'll have to take that apart to find out. The front wing may be integral to the chassis. No, it isn't. Oh, no, it is. We'll figure it out. I think it's time to start taking things apart, folks. So, let's see if the theory is right. Is this a 2-screw to body or more? 1, 2, surprise. Okay, so what we have here is the body. Very clean lines. There's hardly any, I don't see any imperfections in here. No mold lines, no anything. Very nicely done. On the body, you have looks like about 6 attachments. First attachment is the actual wing. It is, like most slot cars nowadays, a simple plastic tab that's been hot welded in the factory to seal it in. You have another hot welded front suspension part. You have a base seat plus driver attached. So here's the top version of each of those. And we also have looks like the seat and the steering wheel are all one piece inside here. You can see the steering wheel. If I turn that over, you can see in here that it looks like it might be one piece attached to the seat, which is nice. Again, the less pieces there are, the less pieces break off. On the back, we have the 2 air vents, again hot welded in here, and we have at the very top there, you have the individual roll hoop. One little, the driver actually looks really nice. Looks like he can be painted up much more detail as well if you want. I do know that these cars are planning to come with plain helmets, so you can paint them up to be whatever driver you might want. At the rear, we have a individual piece here. This is one double attachment, which I really like for the rear wing. Very often these things can come off easily, and having 2 attachments helps a lot. We also have an attachment with the rear brake light and a little bit of engine detail at the back here. And then finally there's a third final piece for the rear suspension, just one on each side. But the impact of that, it really is quite nice. When you look at the car from this perspective, there's a decent amount of detail here. The only slightly unusual thing about it is the motor pod itself is a different color to the chassis. And there's a reason for that, actually. In the world of NSR, because they're a race car brand, what they do is they have multiple different softness or hardnesses of chassis that flex more or less, and each one is color coded, which is very nice from a club's perspective, because what it allows us to do is to instantly see whether somebody's trying to use a chassis that they should or shouldn't be using, or indeed a motor pod. If these little red tabs at the back offend you, just paint them black. It's very simple. Okay, let's look at what we've got in terms of the car. As I suspected, we have the 3 fundamental screw attach points at the front of the motor pod and 2 sides. What's interesting is they have left open the 4th and 5th attachment points for the motor pod. You theoretically either, I'm guessing, can screw those in, or possibly there might be additional pieces that you can bring in, maybe suspension. Interestingly, just looking at this, one of these 3 was screwed in completely. Simple screws you could see there. I can adjust it very, very easily to get more float and vibrational independent isolation of the vibrations from the actual drivetrain to the body itself. Looking at this simple one-piece chassis, looks like they have the ability to, oh no, not the ability, folks. We actually have a magnet here, which surprises me. I'm not used to seeing magnets in our slot cars in our club, at least. Looks like we've got the King V3, the 21,500 RPM. Let's see here, 21,400 RPM with Very nice pinion. I happen to know this is a 10-point teeth pinion, 27 tooth crown wheel. It's a black plastic nylon. All of this is with set screws, which is lovely. Much more likely to be consistent. I can tell you right now, these tires are grippy, just even touching them. And we've got set screw aluminium wheels. Let's have a look here. So, yeah, okay, so this is a standard NSR setup where you have actually what could loosely be termed air suspension in the tires. It is not a solid block of aluminium going across with what we're used to seeing in many other cars. We see a ridge going down the middle of the wheel. Let me show you what I mean by that. This is the old SCX versus the NSR wheel. So you see a difference here in the way the wheel's actually constructed, and there's a parallel difference in how the tires are constructed. I think the theory is, and again, people can write in and complain to us if they don't like it at customerservice@electricdreams.com, that the purpose is to get a bit more suspension out of the wheels. Nonetheless, pretty sharp edges on those, but you're all adults, you should be able to deal with this easily enough. Easy enough to put the tires back on again. Let's have a look at how they're actually constructed. Okay, so basically you got a double edge on the outside, okay, ridges, which attach onto the outside of those two metal ridges on the aluminium wheel. And then you've essentially got a pocket of air that's going to get trapped here and there. Whether that provides additional suspension, I do not know, but I'm sure somebody who is good at measurements can do that. Interesting side effect of what I just did to the tire. The printing on the tire has now come off as a consequence of me violently manhandling it and twisting it. But those are the brakes. Doesn't change how the tire performs. I'm just going to slip that back on here. Yeah, good, okay. That was not, A, it was not hard to put back on again, and B, just visually, obviously one would want to true these completely, but it doesn't look like it's very difficult to get the tires back on easily. They have an interesting feature on NSR cars, or at least this NSR car, whereby the spacer for the wheel, for the axle, is actually a brass tube that sits outside the calibrated axle. By having that there, you're practically preventing, for the life of the car, any movement on a lateral side of the axle, which is quite useful relative to what you can see in other cars. A lot of other cars might have issues where they start to move sideways over time because there's no, and you have to start adding spacers and things like that in there. Overall, looks pretty dang good. On the front, we have an adjustable height front axle, but those set screws simply go into these holes here, and you can choose. You can have them at the top and the bottom, or just one or the other. What that allows you to do is to change the ride height of the front of the car such that you can literally see here, if I push up here, I can get that wheel to move up, and I'm just using the other side of the track, right, of the car. So you could literally set screws in there to bring this up if you felt that the guide, for example, was sitting too proud. You know, you could get situations sometimes where the axle is this far down and it literally is forcing, you can just about see there how the front of the chassis is above the roadway. And now, when I put it down, it is completely flat. That is actually touching. Okay, which is way too low, right? So overall, very nice setup, very, very obviously a car set up for slot car racing. You can certainly have fun with it on the carpet at home and let the kids destroy it, and I would very much encourage that. Kids should have fun as well. But if the kids aren't having fun, you have an excellent looking setup here for slot cars. One last little detail, again, attention to detail from a slot car manufacturer focused on racing. Notice that the actual wires have guide channels for them to be sitting in, and that the guide has complete freedom of movement. It's not going to hit anything, but it does have a stopper to stop the car from spinning out completely if the guide stays in the slot. The one thing I would do here is I would adjust these wires a little bit, because right now they are actually touching. Okay, so let's break from looking at the car itself. Let's reassemble it, and we'll give it a few laps.
Oh, god damn it.
Okay, so this was the NSR Formula One 1986 to 89 new class. All the cars are standardized, but they will come in, I think it's 6 different colors of solid body color, plus a white kit, plus another 7 different liveries based on the real cars back in the time. Things like the cool Leighton House, the Olivetti BMW, Brabham, 2 of the versions of the McLaren, there's going to be a Williams, there's going to be 2 Ferraris. I think that is all the cars, but very cool. Excellent race car, it really is. The likelihood, I think, is for our club that this will be a very high up there candidate to replace our existing Formula One class. The idea that we have a completely standardized, everything is the same for everybody from the perspective of equipment, and there are plenty of cars to be able to choose from in different liveries or to paint up your own livery, I personally think is a great idea. So this is the NSR Formula One 1986 to 89. Honestly, a really, really good race car. Have fun, folks.